Hello and welcome into this week's ARCA Menards Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's ARCA Rewind, we are looking back at Saturday night's Kentuckiana Ford Dealers Fall Classic 200 laps around the Salem Speedway in Salem, Indiana. And I think this was a fantastic race. Yes, we had one driver that flat out dominated this race and led the vast majority of the laps in this race. Very similar to what we had in this race last year with Chandler Smith leading all but one lap in this race last year. We had a very similar situation in this race this year. The difference, though, or not necessarily the difference, because we had a lot of drama in last year's race as well. Think back to Zane Smith and Michael Self, which is still the most viewed video on this channel. We had a lot of drama happening in this race as well. Nothing necessarily to the level of intensity that we got with Zane Smith and Michael Self last year, but still a lot of drama in this race, a lot of championship implications in this race. So first, let's go ahead and get into the caution flags in this race. First one came at lap 23, just a debris caution. Second caution of the race, second of four, came at lap 75 as Gavin Harlan, running the 55 this week for Venturini Motorsports, believe he blew a motor. I never saw anything concrete on this, but I believe that's what happened to that car. As it had a lot of smoke coming out of it, and he ends up stopping at the entrance to pit road and ends up having to be pushed behind the wall. So I believe that car lost a motor at laps at 75. Now, this caution is where things started to get interesting as Michael Self has mechanical issues. Michael Self came into this race with a 70-point lead over his teammate Christian Eckes, and this changed things drastically. Self had to take the car behind the wall. Eventually, it was found out that his issue was a broken bolt on the A-frame of the front suspension. So it's amazing how a broken bolt could be the final straw that could possibly lose Michael Self this championship. Now, that's not saying that he's going to lose the championship, but that could be the oomph that Christian Eckes needs to get up there to the lead at this point. Because 70 points was still a pretty large gap, and had Michael Self finished where he was running in this race, had he gotten a top three finish or third, fourth, somewhere in there, it was going to be very hard for Eckes to continue to chip away at that lead at IRP in Kansas. So with this has tightened the championship battle up drastically. Self spent a good number of laps behind the wall, eventually finally did come back out, but only made up one position before the end of the race. That's all he had time to make up by the time he came back out onto the track. Third caution of the night came at lap 169 as Ed Pompa and Scott Melton got together in turn 3, and Pompa went spinning through 3 and 4. That brought out the caution there for the third time. And then the final caution of the night, actually this third caution kind of changed things up a little bit because Eckes actually beat Ty Gibbs off of pit road. Ty Gibbs had led the first 172 laps of this race. Christian Eckes, though, beat him off of pit road and did lead 4 laps under caution before Gibbs retook the lead on the restart. But there was some question there of, with Eckes restarting the lead, would Gibbs be able to retake the lead? Gibbs was just that fast tonight. There was no stopping him. Final caution came at lap 186 for debris in turn number 4. So only 2 lead changes in this race. As Gibbs led the first 172 laps of the race, Christian Eckes took the lead there, led 4 laps, and then Ty Gibbs reassumed the lead on lap 176 and led for the rest of the race. Ty Gibbs wins his second race of the season. Absolutely dominating drive, leading 196 of the 200 laps in this race. Ty Gibbs flat out dominated this race, and that kind of lends itself to what I think I've said a couple of times here throughout the season. Ty Gibbs has been learning all of these tracks this season. I believe every track this year that we've been to on the ARCA schedule, I may be mistaken on this, but I believe every track we've been to this season that he has raced at, it's his first time racing there at any level. I might be wrong on that for a couple of them, but that should be the case for the majority of them, I do believe. So, and even if it's not, he hasn't run a full-bodied ARCA stock car there. So, a lot of the weekend has been him figuring out these tracks, figuring out the car on that track. And a lot of the time, we don't see a lot out of him in practice. In terms of speed, we don't see a lot out of him in qualifying. We really, a lot of times, don't even see a lot out of him in the first half of the race. But he's always there in the second half of the race, every single race that he is in, because he finally, he continues to learn throughout the race and has finally figured out the track by the time we hit the second half of these races, even though it's the first time he's ever seen this track. And he's always up there in contention for the win, even though he's only now picked up 2 wins. He's always in contention for the win every single time out because he continues to learn these tracks, and by the time we get to the second half of the race, he's figured out these tracks pretty well. And what I've been saying is, look out for him in 2020, because now that he's got a race or two at these tracks under his belt and he's figured them out, he is going to be incredibly dominant next season. And I think this race shows that. He's already been to Salem once now. He figured out Salem in the spring, was fast in the spring, had that late spin, and I don't know that he really could have challenged Michael Self in the spring because Self was so dominant in this race in the spring. But Gibbs took the time and learned this track very well in the spring, and that paid huge dividends in this race. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that as we get into next season to these tracks that he's already been to once. I think we're going to see a lot more wins coming from Ty Gibbs next season. And that's not to say that we're done seeing wins from him this season. We could very well still see a win come out of him in a couple weeks here at Lucas Oil Raceway. That's not out of the question. But I think at IRP we're going to see relatively the same thing as we've seen a lot of these weekends, is him just kind of figuring out the track. He's had a test session or two there, so he's kind of figured it out, but he's not been there under race conditions. So I think we're going to see more of the same. I think he'll be in contention by the end of the race, but I think it'll take him a little while to figure out the track, as it usually seems to. And then next year when we go back to IRP, that's when he's going to really be good at IRP. That's just, given the trends of what we have seen so far, I think that's what we're going to see going forward out of Ty Gibbs. Christian Eckes landed in the second position in this race. A fantastic run out of Christian Eckes. We really had about 4 cars that were capable of finishing second in this race. And and that's the funny thing is, Ty Gibbs was in a league of his own, but then you had about 4 cars, Eckes, Self, Heim, and Mayer, that really were strong second place contenders. Then Self fell out in the middle of the race, and it became a 3-horse race for that second spot between Eckes, Heim, and Mayer. Eckes ended up coming home with that second spot and probably about the best points day that he could possibly get out of the day, because I don't think there was anything anybody could do with Ty Gibbs in this race aside from flat out wrecking him. And obviously you don't want to do that. That's not a way to win a race, but I think that was about the only way anybody was going to beat him. Nobody was going to beat him on raw speed. So with Eckes finishing second in this race, that tightens up the points gap dramatically. As we will see on the next page, Michael Self did not have a good finish in this race at all because of that broken bolt. That's all it takes, is a broken bolt, and all of a sudden this championship battle is right back together. Corey Heim came home in the third position, not without some controversy though. Got into the back of Sam Mayer with a couple laps left, a couple laps into that final run there after that final caution on lap 186. Got into Sam Mayer in turns 1 and 2, pushed him up the track, and Mayer, as you can see, fell back to the 5th position, was not able to really recover from that outside of the 5th position. We got both sides of that in post-race interviews, which again are linked down below in the description. Mayer's side of it was just that he got flat out dumped, and Heim's side of it was that basically it was a little bit of retaliation for what happened at Madison, which if you don't remember, Mayer did have incidents with both Chad Bryant racing cars, Corey Heim and Joe Graff Jr. at Madison. And I did say in the Rewind show for that race, I wondered if that would spill over into another race, if we were starting to see a rivalry build between Sam Mayer and Chad Bryant Racing. It looks like that has finally started to bubble back to the surface. It'll be interesting to see if that's over at this point or if we see more coming out of that in the future. Brett Holmes came home with a solid 4th place finish, which was good enough to win him the CGS Imaging 4-Crown Championship for the season. So congratulations to Brett Holmes on that. The 4-Crown Championship this season was at Talladega, Michigan, Springfield, and this Salem race. So, and that's kind of the point of the 4-Crown Championship, is they get kind of one race from each skill set. You get a super speedway, an intermediate, a dirt track, and a short track. And Holmes was the most consistent over those races. Sam Mayer rounded out the top 5. Rest of your top 10 were Joe Graff Jr., Carson Hocevar, Chandler Smith, Travis Braden, and Colby Howard running the 32 this week for Wintron Racing. 11th through 20th. Michael Self down here in the 14th position was all he could muster. Came back out on the track in 15th, was able to get a spot from Tim Richmond before the end of the race, but that was all he could get to. Wasn't able to get up to Mike Basham there in 13th, as Basham was still running at the end of the race. So a 50-lap difference there, it just wasn't going to happen no matter how fast Self was after he came back out on the track. So 14th was all that he could muster, and if you think about that, with there being 5-point increments between every position in ARCA, not 1 point like we get in the National Series in NASCAR, that's a big point swing. And again, he came in with a 70-point lead, and as we'll see here when we get to the point standings in a moment, that lead is all but gone at this point, and we are set up for a fantastic championship battle over these final couple of races. Gavin Harlan, after his apparent engine issue, came home in the 16th position. And then final page down here, 21st, Ben Peterson, driving the 0 this week, grandson of Wayne Peterson, shotgun on the field, completed 3 laps in this race. But that's your results from the Kentuckiana Ford Dealers ARCA Fall Classic 200 from the Salem Speedway. Like I said, if you want to see post-race thoughts from any of the top 5 finishers, Ty Gibbs, Christian Eckes, Corey Heim, Brett Holmes, or Sam Mayer, they are all linked down below in the description. Great chats with all of them. Again, you get both sides of the Heim and Mayer incident. We got thoughts from both of them on their sides of it. So you make your decision on who you think was in the right, who was in the wrong, and that's that. So let us move on to the point standings following this race, with 2 races remaining in the 2019 season. And as you can see, this points battle is shaping up to be awesome. 5 points is now the gap between Michael Self and Christian Eckes. That is 1 position on track, is all the difference between Michael Self and Christian Eckes now, with 2 races remaining in this season. Shaping up to be a fantastic championship battle in these final couple of races. Brett Holmes still not out of it. 110 points back in the 3rd position. Going to take a little bit of luck on his side to get back up there in it, but he's definitely not out of it just yet. Travis Braden, I don't know that he's officially mathematically eliminated at this point, but with what the field sizes have been lately and the point spread that comes with that, again, I don't know that he's officially mathematically eliminated, but I think realistically he is mathematically eliminated depending on what field sizes look like at IRP and Kansas. But even with some slightly larger fields at those races, if we get slightly larger fields, it's going to take a lot of luck on his side to challenge for this championship at this point. And then Joe Graff Jr. back here still sits in the 5th position, 350 points off of the lead. Now, the point I want to make here, if you have seen the post-race interview with Christian Eckes, he is very, I apologetic is probably not the word, but remorseful at having gained points on Michael the way that he did in this race and closing that points gap the way that he did. Not that he could really control that, but I mean, he did mention multiple times that that's not the way that he wants to close that gap. That's not the way, if it happens, that's not the way that he wants to win the championship. And the way I see it is, Eckes did miss the one race. He missed the spring race at Salem. But Michael Self has had a lot of mechanical issues this season. A lot of mechanical issues. More than I think he probably should have. And I question why there's been that many mechanical issues on that 25 car. And I don't want to start any conspiracy theories or anything, but it just seems weird that the 25 car is the only car in that Venturini stable that seems to be consistently having mechanical issues. It's not every week, but they seem to have had a lot more than the rest of the cars coming out of that shop. Now, the way I see that is, honestly, it almost feels like the universe trying to even itself out here. Because I think this is roughly where we would be in the championship battle, how close it would be, had Eckes been at that race in Salem in the spring. If you take that out, if you take out Eckes missing that spring Salem race, if he runs that race, and if you take out the mechanical issues that Self has had this season and he runs where he should have in all the races that he had mechanical issues, I think this is roughly where we would be in the point standings. So I think that's just the universe kind of trying to even itself out here and give us the championship battle that we deserve this season, the championship battle that we should have between these two. Because in essence, again, I think this is about where we would be. If you take out Eckes missing the one race and you take out all the mechanical issues, I think this is probably roughly where we would be. So, I understand why Christian feels bad about gaining points the way that he did in this race, but at the same time, he can't control that, and I think that's kind of the way you have to look at it. Is it's not a matter of you capitalizing on Michael's bad luck, because, I mean, he missed a full race. Christian missed a full race this season, and the fact that he is 5 points out of the championship lead with 2 races remaining, that speaks volumes to the season he has had. To miss a full race, get no points for one race, 0, big goose egg in the points that he has for the spring Salem race, and only be 5 points out of the championship lead with 2 races remaining. That sounds like a championship season to me. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a championship-worthy season to me, and that's taking nothing away from Michael Self, because he has had a championship-worthy season as well, but to miss a full race and only be 5 points out of the lead with 2 races remaining, that's incredible. And whether Christian wins this championship or not, that's something he can hang his hat on, in the fact that he could go a full race and still be a serious championship contender. That to me, that's incredible. That is definitely a championship caliber season, whether he actually wins the championship or not. But that's your point standings following the Kentuckiana Ford Dealers Fall Classic 200 from Salem, and I believe that'll do it for us on this ARCA Rewind. Might be an Xfinity Rewind tonight. It is already pretty late, and I do have to be at the day job tomorrow. I'll do my best to get it up, but I can't make any promises on that. And to be honest, I didn't even see the race. I do know Tyler Reddick did win, but that's really all I know about the Xfinity race. I'm going to have to go back and look and do a little bit of research if I do record an Xfinity Rewind, because other than knowing Tyler Reddick won, I don't know anything about what happened in that race, because I was too busy at Salem covering this race. So If at all possible, I will get an Xfinity Rewind up tonight, but just know it may not happen. But there should be a Cup Rewind tomorrow night for Vegas for the first race of the playoffs. That will definitely be up tomorrow night. It will be late tomorrow night because I will be at the day job until midnight tomorrow on Sunday night, but it will be up tomorrow night. And then should have a podcast starting on this week, I believe on Wednesday. Unless plans change here, we're planning on recording that on Monday. So look out for a new podcast starting this week. Should be a really fun one, not your typical NASCAR podcast. So look out for that. It will be, I think it'll be a fun one. I hope you enjoy it as much as I will too. But then we're off for ARCA for a couple of weeks here. We've got Lucas Oil Raceway coming up on October 5th. That'll be the next time we are at the track. But of course, we will have rewind shows for you every weekend as time allows for all the rest of these races. I hate to say as time allows, but that's kind of what it's been lately. It has been hard to get some of these out lately, and I do apologize for that. I'm getting them out the best I can, but sometimes other things just get in the way of that. So we'll have them for you. We'll have at least one for you every weekend. I do know that. So look forward to that. Diecast review coming up this week. The last 2018 Cup car. It is not a raced version, but it is not a regular version either. So something kind of cool for you this week on Diecast review. So keeping that a little bit of a surprise until Wednesday for you. So yeah, cool stuff coming up here. We've got some other stuff in the works that we're trying to get started here in the next few weeks. Don't know exactly when they're going to be started, but do have some other cool things hopefully on the horizon in the near future. So if you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the ARCA Menards Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.